Hi, I'm David Stein of Money for the Rest of Us. This is a channel on money, investing, and the economy. Today we're looking at timeshares. Are they a scam? Are they a good investment? We'll take a look at the financials of timeshares, how to buy one, how to sell one. Let's go ahead and take a deep dive, take a look at timeshares. And first, let's start with the three basic timeshare models. First, you can own a week or two at a specific property. There is a deed, and it's just like owning a piece of real estate, but it's just a portion of a resort. We can also have a beneficiary interest in a trust that owns a number of different resorts. Those models typically use some type of point system. The third way is really a right-to-use plan, where it's more of a contractual agreement. You're not owning the real estate itself. Now, when you purchase a timeshare under those first two models, it can be as complicated as buying a piece of real estate. There's a closing, there's title fees, potentially a title search, there's a recording of the deed with the county in which the entity was purchased. Now, these timeshares have been around since the 60s, and in the U.S., mostly in the 1970s. So this is a tried and true business model of over 50 years. It's hard to think that a 50-year business model is a scam. It would have been shut down by now, or people would have stopped buying them. Yet they do. Now, there's a difference between saying this is not a scam and realizing that this is not an investment. And we need to understand the financials of timeshares to realize, no, this isn't an investment. This is prepaid vacation. Now let's consider the cost of timeshares. The first is just the cost to buy in. For example, my wife and I own a timeshare. We bought it 15 years ago from Marriott Vacation Clubs. It's in Park City, Utah. On the mountain, the base of the ski slope, we paid $17,200 per week. And we own 3 weeks because Lapril left the room and they convinced me to buy 2 more weeks. Now, that's essentially, as I said, prepaid vacation. That right to stay at that property during the summer and fall months, 1 week a year, or at least 3 weeks a year in our case. Now, in addition to that upfront payment, and most timeshare owners will finance that upfront payment, there's the annual maintenance cost. This represents the operating expenses for the resort. There's the housekeeping fees, there's somebody to man the front desk, there's maintenance, there's a reserve, there's fees paid to management, including management of the particular unit, as well as the timeshare company itself. A portion of the maintenance fees that we pay every year goes to Marriott Vacation Club for providing owner services and because it's their brand. Now, about 28% of the fees that we pay, the annual maintenance fee, goes into a reserve. And those are for capital improvements or replacements, such as the roof. A typical roof for our property lasts 19 years. The furnishings and the fixtures last about 9 to 10 years. The building needs to be painted. So this particular resort, as in all timeshare resorts, have to be updated and kept up all the time, just like you would with any real estate property that you own. Now, why is it then that timeshares don't appreciate? Well, this budget, these annual maintenance costs are set by a board. And as an owner of a timeshare, you get to vote on the board of directors, and they look at the operating cost of the resort, figure out what the budget should be that year for the maintenance fees, and then divide that by all the weeks and all the different owners. Now, this isn't a profit-making enterprise. They run a break-even budget, like a not-for-profit. Unlike traditional rental real estate, an apartment building or some other, even your home, if you're renting it out, if you raise the rent, the value goes up. But that's not the case with timeshares because they're not raising the rent. They're just trying to cover the cost. So you don't have rising cash flows that can drive a higher value of the timeshare itself. It's a very, very expensive resort property. Maybe the land will appreciate a little bit, But we'll see when we look at the economics of timeshares that even with potential land appreciation, the way they're sold, you do not see price appreciation with timeshares. And if an investment or anything you buy is not expected to go up in price, well, then it's not really an investment. In this case, a timeshare is indeed prepaid vacation. The other reason that timeshares don't appreciate is a big portion of that upfront fee. In our case, we paid $17,200 per week. Much of that was marketing incentives. So let's take a look at the marketing incentives to sell a timeshare. First off, there's something known as a mini vac. And what a mini vac is, it's just a discounted vacation that the timeshare company will sell you in order to pitch you on buying into the timeshare. And so if you buy a mini vac, you typically have to take a tour of the timeshare itself. Now, in order to get others to take the tour, like we're owners at Marriott Vacation Club, every time we stay, somebody's calling me on the phone trying to convince me to take a tour. Sometimes we have, and most of the time anymore we don't. Now they offer a $150 American Express card, a gift card, anytime we could take a tour. So you have those incentives. You also have the purchase incentives. When we purchased our Marriott Vacation Club timeshare, they gave us thousands and thousands of Marriott points. Now there's a cost to that. So all those things together are very, very expensive. In the timeshare industry, there's something known as value per guest. In the case of Marriott Vacation Club, it's $1,000 per guest. And what value per guest is, or VPG, is how much does the timeshare owner or the operator make per tour given. In the case of Marriott, they make $1,000 per tour. But not everybody buys. The typical purchase with Marriott is about $30,000. So if the value per guest is only $1,000 and the typical purchase is $30,000, that suggests they only sell one timeshare package per 30 tours. And if they're paying $150 for each of those tours, that's $4,500 in marketing cost, plus the mini vacs. And so when that owner is paying $30,000, half of it might be marketing incentives that they got, as well as all the people that took a tour that didn't actually purchase. So from that standpoint, it's not surprising when you buy a timeshare that after you buy it, let's say you pay $30,000, and then you turn around and try to sell it, it's only worth $15,000 because all you have is this property. You have a lifetime commitment, even your heirs, to make these operating costs, pay these maintenance fees. And why is that? Well, if you own an apartment building and you die, your heirs will inherit that apartment building. They still have to maintain it. And that's the thing with timeshares. It's all cost and the revenues never increase. So let's take a look at a timeshare example. This is the case of our timeshare. And this is really how to think about it when you're potentially buying a timeshare. We paid $17,200. The way that I look at it, we've owned it 15 years. We'll probably get another, let's say, 25 years of use out of it before maybe we don't want to go any more or we pass away. So if we take that $17,200 and divide it by 50 years, that's about $344 per year. For 7 nights, that prepaid vacation we're paying $29 per night over a 50-year time frame. And then the maintenance fees. This year, the maintenance fee or 2022 will be $1,500. That works out to about $214 per night. If we take that $214, add the $29, that is $243 that we're paying next year per night to stay at that timeshare. Now that's something that we can compare to staying somewhere else. It could be a hotel suite. In the case of Marriott Vacation Club, these are really, really nice resorts. So we want to compare them to something like a JW Marriott or even a Ritz-Carlton. And if you look at the price for a suite, a 2-bedroom suite, and that's what we get, that can be $500 to $1,000 per night. So from that standpoint, paying what equates to $243 per night is a bargain because you get so much space and the properties are very, very well maintained. Now, that's not the case for all timeshares. Sometimes the resorts aren't maintained and the maintenance fees aren't high enough, and so the resort degrades, and then you're like comparing it to an Airbnb, and those are nicer. Or a resort might be nicer than the actual timeshare. And that's what you want to compare. Like, what will be the upfront payment or the finance payment over 50 years or more per year or per night? What's the maintenance fee per night? And then what is that? How does that compare to other options? Now, that's the analysis that we've done to feel more comfortable owning a timeshare. I'm not saying we would buy another one because, again, we bought it and it hasn't appreciated. We've certainly looked at selling it, but when we look at what we're going to get for selling it, not so much either. And that's going to take a hit if we try to sell it. And so when we look at, well, here's this vacation that we've prepaid into perpetuity, it's actually on a per night basis cheaper than other options of comparable quality. So let's talk about selling a timeshare. There are a number of sites out there. Some are a little scammy, but one of the best sites I found is sellmytimesharesnow.com, and there's also Red Week. I spoke with a rep at sellmytimesharenow.com to understand the process. What happens when you sell your timeshare, because it is a piece of real estate, is there's closing, and there's a closing cost, and they can be between $1,200 and $1,500. The buyer of the timeshare typically pays those closing costs. Now, the seller, in our case, if we wanted to list the timeshare on sellmytimesharenow.com, it would be around $1,900 to list that timeshare. Now, some people complain like, oh, I don't want to pay $1,900. But it's their network. They're bringing the buyer. That's where the value add is, and that's all you have to pay. Whatever, you set your own price, and you back out the $1,900, and that's what you'll net. Now, in our case, if we look at that particular week that we own in Park City, it's listed on Sell My Timeshares Now for $8,500 to $11,000. And then if we wanted to sell it, we would deduct the $2,000 listing fee, and that's what we would net. Now, Marriott will gladly buy our timeshare back. They say the gross amount, it's worth $8,200, but after their fees, we would net only $4,200. So much, much less selling it back to Marriott versus one of these resale sites, one of these legitimate resale sites. So do your research, but the two that I found with Red Week and Sell My Timeshare Now, they have the most organic search traffic. They seem to have very good reviews, recognizing that people that sell their timeshares are often a little disgruntled because they realize this isn't an investment and they're going to lose money on their timeshare purchase. So those are the economics of a timeshare. It's not an investment. It's prepaid vacation. There are heavy marketing fees in that upfront cost. So when you try to sell it, you're not going to get your money out of it. On the other hand, if you want to buy a timeshare, purchasing on one of these used timeshare sites can be a real benefit, because in that case, you're not paying all those marketing fees. In fact, some of these sites, people are giving their timeshare away because they're so sick of paying the maintenance fees, the operating cost. So that's our video on timeshares. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Hopefully you have found it instructive. For most people, they probably shouldn't buy a timeshare. So when you go to one of these tours, sort of go in realizing this isn't an investment. This is prepaid vacation for the rest of your life and potentially the life of your kids. So be very, very careful. But for some people, particularly for the higher end resorts, timeshares can make sense if you really like to go back to the same place over and over again. You like the consistency, knowing that the resort is going to be the same every year. In our case, we would never do it again, but we're keeping the one that we own because it's cheaper than staying at some type of suite hotel. And that's how timeshares works. Hey, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks.